And the week before, I was going through one of the disciplines, and that discipline was the discipline of work. And I realized that our society today is filled with lazy people. It is so amazing that our world and the structure of our society is somehow easily and quickly taking us all to focus on fun and things that excite us and things that we enjoy doing in a lazy way. You go from one home to another, you find, just beginning with our children, how much we expose them to watching TV, to playing on our phones, to just fail to do those basic works that our children should be doing. Just to take plates off the table after a meal is quite a heavy burden. We see our children dragging our feet. Can you clean the table? I'm not on duty. It's supposed to be him. It's supposed to be her. Take the plate to the kitchen. It is either just put by the counter or it just dumped in the sink. You literally have to follow through. Can you pick the plate? Can you take it to the kitchen? Can you put it on the counter? Can you wash it? And all those little things, pick the things on the floor. You come to our surroundings. It seems today you give a child a slasher or a hoy or something to do. Can you clean up this area? No, that's child abuse. No. Children are not supposed to do. No. That's why we've employed Auntie So and Uncle So. And so you find that just working has become something that we do not treasure anymore. A few years ago, we find that it was quite a heavy discussion in the home. Parents worked hard to make sure children learn how to work as early as possible. And so they clean your bedroom quickly, wake up early, brush your teeth before you go to have your breakfast. Have you made your bed? Have you put things in order? Is everything looking right? Yes, it is. Now you can go and have your breakfast. You shouldn't have your breakfast in pajamas. You shouldn't wake up and rush to the phone or rush to the TV. Get things done. That seems to be the talk of yesterday. Today, young children wake up early in the morning, the first thing, phone. We give them the phone. They're in pajamas, their faces are not washed, their teeth is not brushed. They go and sit in the sitting room, the TV is on, the phone is on, the iPad is on, I don't know what else is on, and it's all about entertainment. No wonder our children think like cartoons and hardly thinking like human beings. And the simple thing is, there is a problem that our society is going through, that we are facing, and that is, we are not culturing a society that has a discipline of work. That has a discipline of work. Apart from the children, even us adults, we are equally guilty. It is so sad that you go out in the world there, and people, in fact Christians, prefer to employ non-believers than believers. Some of the laziest people in our workplaces are Christians. Some of the people who are laid back at responsibilities in the workplace are actually Christians. Professing and confessing Bible-believing born-agains are the ones who are so lazy. And somehow we have divorced work, commitment to work, with spirituality and godliness. We think to be godly is to be found in church more often, to always be seen having prayers and fasting and all kinds of things, and yet the very basic responsibility that we are called to, work, we are not doing it. Brethren, if there are people who should be the excellent workers, that should set a #1 record in any company, in any society, everywhere we are, it should be Christians. And we will see that as we venture into God's word this morning. And so, it is only important that as we enter into 2023, we begin to ask ourselves that at the very beginning of God's creation, he began by calling us to what would be termed, from a theological context, a cultural mandate, that we were given a responsibility to work. That was the first thing before the fall. God gave us a responsibility to work. And it's only prudent that as the year begins, we may also begin this year with a deeper introspection in relation to work. How am I doing with what God has called me to do? Am I working? And I'm not talking about just a paid job, because now we all, whenever we hear the word work, we think of a paid job. No, I don't have a job, so I can't work. No, I'm not employed, so I can't work. No, that's not what I'm talking about. Work is, we're going to see, that every Christian, God has given us a task and has given us an ability and has given us a place where that ability should meet and carried out for God's glory. All of us. It may be merely being a security guard, merely sweeping the floor, merely attending to the needs of another person's children, working in somebody's yard, working in an office, working on a construction site, working in the hospital, at an orphanage, wherever it is, whether there's a salary or not, working around the yard. You wake up in the morning as a young man or as a young woman and say, this is my father's yard at home. The grass doesn't look right. Let me put it in order. The windows are dirty. Let me do some work and clean them. It is doing something, whether you are paid or not. But today, our young people, when the father or mother says, you know what, there's too much grass there. Can you boys clean it up? Nishinga. How much? You know, we want to be rewarded, and we want the reward to be our motivation. For that reason, I invite you to go to Proverbs chapter 6, and beginning at verse 6 to 11. I want to draw your attention to this that Solomon brings before us, in which he speaks against laziness. And from the flip side of this idea, we will now venture to understand, therefore, that if being a sluggard or being lazy is totally contrary to what God has designed and has called us to do, then what is it that we should be doing? And then we'll venture to understand the idea of work. Verse 6, go to the ant, you sluggard. Consider her ways and be wise. Without having any chief officer or ruler, she prepares her bread in summer and gathers her food in harvest. How long will you lie there, O sluggard? When will you arise from your sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hand to rest, and poverty will come upon you like a robber, and want like an armed man. A worthless person, a wicked man, goes about with crooked speech. Dear beloved, the Bible here invites us to look at this little insect called an ant, akanyerere. That little thing that we all see how it is so engaged. And the Bible here draws our attention to the idea that it is busy working. And he's saying, hey, lazy person, do you want to learn something? Just go take time, look at nature, and particularly this little tiny insect. The work it does, it gathers food in the summer and prepares its bread, because rainy day is coming, winter day is coming, when there will be no supply. He or she would have gathered for himself or herself, and also for the family. And as Solomon invites us to look at this little ant, and he also provokes us not to be lazy. That's why he says, you sluggard, referring to the idea of a lazy person, one who has a laissez-faire attitude, one who is always laid back and always saying, well, we'll get it done tomorrow, and all procrastination going on back and forth. He says, go to the ant. Look at its diligence. Look at its commitment. Look at how enthusiastic it is about what it is doing. Look at how excellent it does. Look at how it goes to break down big things into small particles and take them into the little tiny hole where it stays. Once and many other times I've done that. Killed a big cockroach and seen how ants go for it. On occasions I've never moved the cockroach and I just watch maybe for 2 or 3 days. You kill the cockroach today, following day you will find it totally broken down into tiny pieces. And they will carry that huge hunt, if I may call it, and break it down and take it to where they live, and you will see it no more within 2 days. And they gather that for the winter time. With that in mind, church, as the Lord reminds us here and says, watch how this little insect behaves and learn to work. I want to bring to your attention 2 things. Number 1, the theology of work. The theology of work. And number 2, the discipline of work. The theology of work simply being, what does the Bible say about working? What does the Bible say about working? Is this the idea of working our own idea? Is it something that we've come up with? That's why our children rebel against us whenever we tell them to work? Do we ask too much from our children when we tell them to sweep, to wash plates, to make their bed, to wash their clothes, to clean the surrounding, to be diligent with work, to have it done at the right time and all those things? Are we just coming up with all those things so that we may make it hard and difficult for our children? Or is it something that we can see in the Bible? Well, let's begin from the top. The Bible tells us that God himself, to begin with, has been working. The Bible demonstrates that God is a working God. Go with me to Genesis chapter 1. Right there in the very beginning, the Bible demonstrates that God communicates to us, firstly, his very existence and his very nature in terms of power and creation. And secondly, immediately after that, he tells us what he is engaged in. Immediately, he says in verse 1, in the beginning, God. That's the first thing. He tells us about himself. And the second thing he says right there, created the heavens and the earth. So from the very start, God has been working. This is the first thing that God tells us about himself, that he is God and he has been working. What kind of work has he been doing? He has been creating, or he created. So the very first verse of the Bible doesn't tell us about the attributes of God, doesn't tell us about these characteristics of God. It doesn't tell us all that. Yes, of course, we can, if we did some deductive study and mine it out from that first part of that verse. But simply, God says, I am, I have been creating. I am, I have created. I am, I have been working. So God introduces to us his act of work, creation. Look at Genesis chapter 2